Imagine waking up on your 66th birthday, not to breakfast in bed at a luxurious estate, but to law enforcement officers arriving at your door to place you under arrest, completely upending everything you thought you knew about your untouchable status in society. That is exactly the shocking reality allegedly facing the man formerly known as Prince Andrew. But if you think the arrest itself is the biggest part of this story, you are entirely mistaken, because right now, behind closed doors, global leaders are actively conspiring to execute a constitutional maneuver so incredibly rare that it could permanently rewrite the entire history of the monarchy. We are talking about a totally unprecedented push to officially erase an immediate royal family member from the line of succession, a move that is suddenly gaining massive international momentum, and the details surrounding how they actually plan to pull this off will leave you completely speechless. To really understand the sheer gravity of this unfolding situation, we have to look back at what just happened on February 19th, a day that was supposed to be a quiet birthday celebration for the former Duke of York at the family's Sandringham estate. But instead, it turned into a massive international spectacle when authorities arrived to arrest him on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Just think about the sheer logistics of local law enforcement crossing the highly guarded gates of a private royal property. That alone tells you the invisible shield protecting the elite is rapidly deteriorating. Now, according to reports, this isn't just a simple misunderstanding or a minor infraction. This intensely serious investigation stems from his time serving as a trade envoy for the United Kingdom between 2001 and 2011, where sources claim police are investigating grave allegations that he shared highly confidential state information with a disgraced and convicted financier, Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew has repeatedly and vehemently denied any wrongdoing whatsoever, and it is strictly alleged at this point, but the mere optics of a former senior royal facing these types of official criminal inquiries has thrown the entire establishment into an absolute public relations tailspin. But here is the massive question no one was asking until today, a detail that changes the entire context of the scandal. How does a guy who has already been completely stripped of his military titles, stripped of his public patronages, and basically hidden away from the public eye, still legally hold the 8th spot in line for the British throne? It seems absolutely absurd, right? Well, that is precisely the question that is currently ripping through the halls of Parliament, and the answer is about to trigger a legal domino effect that spans the entire globe. You see, being removed from public life doesn't automatically erase your birthright, because succession is governed by ancient, rigid laws that literally require a formal act of Parliament to change, meaning that until lawmakers physically draft new legislation to boot him out, he technically sits right behind Prince Harry's 2 young children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, in the royal queue. But this is exactly where the plot thickens immensely, because you cannot just pass a law in London and call it a day. The British monarch is also the official head of state for 14 other independent Commonwealth realms, meaning countries like Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Jamaica, and the Bahamas allegedly have to give their explicit legislative consent before the line of succession can be legally altered. And if you're wondering whether those sovereign nations are actually going to play along with this historic, unprecedented removal, the answer just arrived in a stunningly blunt letter from the other side of the planet that changed everything overnight. Just days after the arrest made global headlines, Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese did something that absolutely shocked veteran royal commentators. He formally threw his full political weight behind the idea of wiping Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor entirely off the royal map forever. In an official communication sent directly to UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Albanese reportedly confirmed that his government would completely support any formal proposal to remove the former prince from the line of succession, stating that these are incredibly grave allegations and that Australians take them very seriously. Think about the sheer magnitude of that for a second. It takes a very special, almost generational kind of talent to unite politicians across entirely different continents just to officially fire you from a hypothetical job that you were literally never going to get anyway. I mean, honestly, it is a bit humorous when you step back and look at the sheer amount of global bureaucracy required just to formally tell a guy who is 8th in line that he is definitely never getting a promotion to the top spot. But humor aside, my personal take on this is actually quite positive, because seeing global leaders prioritize accountability and transparency over outdated royal traditions shows that we are moving toward a modern society where no one, absolutely no one, gets a free pass just because of the famously wealthy family they were born into. It feels like responsible, necessary progress, even if it is a bit messy to watch unfold in real time on the world stage. But the Australian Prime Minister didn't just stop there. He also explicitly agreed with King Charles's reported public stance that the law must take its full course and that there must be a fair, proper, and complete investigation into these allegations. This brings us to a fascinating secondary mystery that is keeping everyone on the edge of their seats. What exactly is the king's role in all of this unprecedented chaos? While King Charles famously stripped his younger brother of his remaining royal titles and honors previously, the fact that he is allegedly allowing the legal system to operate without any royal interference sends a massive, undeniable signal to the world that the famous royal protective shield is officially gone for good. But wait, if you think removing someone from the line of succession is totally impossible or has never been done before, you desperately need to hear about the bizarre historical loopholes that make this entirely possible today. While it is incredibly rare, there is actual historical precedent for kicking someone out of the royal queue, and the mechanisms they used in the past are exactly what modern lawmakers are frantically studying right now. The most famous example, of course, is King Edward VIII, who famously lost his place in the line of succession when he voluntarily abdicated the throne back in 1936 to marry an American, which was massively scandalous at the time, but he chose to leave on his own terms. However, forcibly removing someone against their absolute will, that brings us to a much lesser-known piece of history involving Queen Elizabeth's cousin, Prince Michael of Kent. Back in 1978, Prince Michael was actually abruptly yanked right out of the line of succession simply because he married a Catholic, all thanks to a wildly outdated piece of legislation known as the Act of Settlement of 1701. Now, Prince Michael was eventually reinstated decades later in 2013 when the Succession to the Crown Act finally modernized the rules. But the overarching point is that Parliament absolutely has the power, the legal precedent, and the historical blueprint to rewrite the royal roster whenever they deem it absolutely necessary for the survival of the institution. So if they can completely remove a senior royal simply for marrying someone of a different faith, you can only imagine how quickly they might mobilize to remove someone facing a formal police investigation over suspected misconduct in public office. And the immense political pressure to do so is mounting by the minute, especially when you consider the absolutely wild public relations nightmare this entire saga is creating globally. For instance, just recently, bold activists from an anti-billionaire group in Paris literally sneaked into the world-famous Louvre Museum and successfully hung a framed photograph of Andrew being arrested right there on the museum wall, complete with mocking commentary about his current unprecedented predicament. The image went completely viral across social media, proving that this scandal isn't just a local UK political issue. It's morphed into a massive global cultural moment where the entire world is watching to see if the establishment will actually hold its own accountable. But how did we even get to this intense boiling point? The spectacular downfall has been an incredibly long time coming, stretching back to a disastrous 2019 television interview where he inexplicably attempted to justify his ties to the disgraced financier, which completely backfired in spectacular fashion and immediately led to him stepping back from all public duties. Then came the civil lawsuit from a woman who alleged severe misconduct, claiming he firmly believed inappropriate relations were his absolute birthright, detailing terrifying encounters supposedly arranged when she was just 17 years old. Andrew furiously denied these claims for years, but ultimately settled the lawsuit out of court for an undisclosed, highly speculated sum, essentially avoiding a massive public trial but completely shattering whatever was left of his public image. The woman involved in that massive lawsuit tragically passed away recently at the age of 41, but her explosive posthumous memoir and newly unveiled highly sensitive email exchanges have poured fresh gasoline on this already raging fire. And just when people thought the scandal had reached its absolute peak, the police literally showed up at Sandringham on his birthday to escalate things to a highly serious level.
Now the authorities are zeroing in on this specific angle of misconduct in public office, which is a very unique and highly consequential legal territory because it focuses strictly on his behavior while acting as an official representative of the state.
As a UK trade envoy, his official job was to vigorously promote British business interests abroad, a highly privileged role that naturally granted him unfettered access to incredibly sensitive, confidential economic and state information. The absolute core of the current investigation allegedly revolves around whether he deliberately shared this privileged, classified information with unauthorized individuals, specifically his disgraced financier associate, potentially compromising national economic interests in the process. If these stunning reports hold true, this instantly elevates the situation from a devastating personal scandal into a potential matter of state security and a severe institutional breach of trust. No wonder the Australian Prime Minister is rushing to completely distance his country from the massive fallout before it gets any worse. But let's pause and really think about the absolute logistical nightmare this presents for the British Parliament moving forward. Drafting legislation to permanently remove a specific individual from the succession line isn't like passing a standard local tax bill. It requires drafting a highly specific, airtight legal document that must be intensely debated in the House of Commons, approved by the House of Lords, and then somehow flawlessly coordinated with completely independent governments across 14 different Commonwealth realms. It is an administrative marathon of epic proportions, and yet sources firmly claim the government is actively considering this exact exhausting route. Why would they go through all that incredible trouble? Because the alternative, leaving him exactly where he is, presents a scenario so undeniably toxic that they are clearly willing to endure months, if not years, of constitutional headaches just to avoid it entirely. Imagine a purely hypothetical, incredibly unlikely but technically possible legal scenario where a massive, unimaginable tragedy strikes the immediate royal family and the crown, legally, automatically falls to someone actively being investigated for severe public misconduct. The monarchy, an ancient institution that relies entirely on public approval, optical prestige, and the unwavering perception of moral authority, simply could not survive that devastating reality in the modern world. Therefore, this incredibly complex legislative maneuvering isn't just about punishing one controversial man. It is entirely about desperate self-preservation for an institution that is over 1,000 years old. And what I find absolutely fascinating, and honestly a bit refreshing from an analytical standpoint, is how surprisingly transparent this entire chaotic process has suddenly become. For decades, the royal family's golden, unbreakable rule was never complain, never explain, and always handle embarrassing family matters quietly behind thick, impenetrable castle walls. But right now, we are seeing prime ministers publicly broadcasting their legislative intentions, police openly conducting official investigations on private royal properties, and the reigning monarch allegedly stepping back completely to let the justice system do its job without an ounce of interference. It is a monumental, tectonic shift in how power operates in the modern era, signaling to viewers everywhere that the era of absolute, unquestioned immunity is rapidly coming to an entirely unceremonious end. It makes you wonder, though, what the immediate future actually holds for the former prince as he nervously waits out this investigation inside his lavish estate, with his public duties gone, his prestigious military titles stripped away, his charitable patronages revoked, and now the very real impending possibility of losing his birthright entirely. He is essentially becoming a ghost within his own family's legacy. It is a stunning, dramatic fall from grace that rivals any fictional political thriller you could possibly watch on television. But this is playing out in real life, with real consequences and incredibly real geopolitical stakes. As the days go by, absolutely everyone is waiting for the next major shoe to drop in this unbelievable saga. Will the UK government officially announce the new succession legislation next week? Will other major Commonwealth nations release their own strongly worded letters echoing Australia's intense demands? And perhaps most importantly, what exactly will the police uncover as they dig deeper into those highly confidential files from his decade-long stint as an international trade envoy? We are standing on the very precipice of an absolutely historic constitutional event, one that will undoubtedly be studied in history classes and legal textbooks for generations to come, and the momentum is only accelerating with each passing hour. The undeniable fact that all of this is allegedly happening right under our noses
while bold activists hang viral photos in Parisian museums and global leaders exchange formal public letters of condemnation, just proves that truth really is stranger than fiction. It is absolutely crucial to repeatedly remember that as of right now, these remain unproven allegations, and he has continuously and aggressively denied any official wrongdoing. But in the unforgiving court of public opinion and the ruthless, fast-paced arena of international politics, the final verdict seems to already be driving massive, irreversible legislative action that no one can stop. So, as we closely watch this unprecedented, historic saga unfold before our very eyes, one thing is abundantly, undeniably clear to anyone paying attention. The British monarchy is quietly preparing for a massive structural restructuring, and the massive ripples of this single shocking arrest are going to fundamentally reshape the royal family tree forever, leaving us all to eagerly wonder who will be the next to speak out and what hidden secret will be uncovered next.